Charlotte, North Carolina, known for its banking, commerce, and sports, is home to one of the region's most exciting and diverse cultural communities. Not far from the bustling downtown business district is the historic community of North Charlotte. Once a thriving textile mill town at the beginning of the century, North Charlotte fell victim to economic hard times and descended into poverty and structural decay by the mid-1980s. In 1989, North Charlotte experienced a rebirth of sorts in the form of several art galleries that opened along North Davidson Street, the main road into North Charlotte from the uptown area. These galleries, and the other businesses they helped to usher in, sparked an economic and cultural ascendancy that continues to grow. The initiators of this amazing rebirth were Ruth Ava Lyons and Paul Sayers, who in 1986 opened the Center of the Earth Gallery and Studios, which soon became the best-known alternative gallery in Charlotte. Other galleries, such as the Rococo Fish and art groups like the Friends of Van Gogh, soon followed Ruth and Paul's lead by moving to North Davidson Street. Together, these artists helped to bring in the city's popular gallery crawls, that in turn brought in other businesses, such as restaurants and shops. With all of this, of course, came money. Now known collectively as NoDa, the area between 35th and 36th Streets, and the artists who work and exhibit there, have made a name for themselves as one of the most dynamic art scenes in the Southeast.
In 1983, we came to Charlotte. There was a artist in residency position at Spirit Square, and so that's what originally brought us to the city. And so we worked. I worked in that capacity as the ceramics person there for a few years, and then we decided that we wanted to try to find studio space. And that was about 3 years later. We had both done a residency at a place called Bemis in Omaha, which is an artist in residency program. When we came back from that, we were determined to find studio space that we could own, because at that time Charlotte was a real boom town, and all of the friends of ours that were artists downtown kept getting relocated. The buildings would be torn down, and that's a pretty typical scenario with the arts in general. So we looked and looked and looked, and came across this little abandoned area, which at that time we had no idea was, North Charlotte.
It was kind of like a little ghost town, just had this incredible character. It had been neglected and abandoned, but it was still wonderful. We really liked the character of the area and the buildings.
I met somebody that said, "Well, do you know Paul and Ruth Sayers?" And I said, "No, I've heard of them. I don't really know them." He said, "Well, here's their telephone number. Call them up." So I called them up and said, "I'm looking for studio space." And Paul said, "Well, here's our address. Come up and see me." And I remember driving up. They said it was on Davidson Street, and I was only aware of Davidson Street in terms of downtown Charlotte. And I drove further and further north, and things got a little bleaker and a little bleaker, and I thought, my God, what do we got here? And I got up there, and then this opens up to this obviously interesting old community, and I went in, and here's this wonderful art gallery, Center of the Earth Gallery, and I thought, my gosh, it's really something up here in the middle of nowhere. And I talked to Paul and Ruth, and we spent better part of a morning talking, and shared a lot of experiences and talked about art. And so that was the beginning of my relationship with the North Davidson Art District.
I think because the buildings are so close to the sidewalk, because they're storefronts so you could look in, there was this sense of being in a real town, in a spot where something really happened. Not that something was artificial, not that you were in a mall community, not where you were protected from the elements or from people that were scary to you or that didn't look like you, that it was real, and it felt like the closest I could get to a real urban experience. And then I also remember going to a party that Ruth had in her studio, and it was a birthday party for a friend of ours, and it was great to go there. And I remember driving up, and I think I parked on 35th Street in North Davidson, and walking in there, I thought I went to graduate school in New York, I went to gallery openings in New York, and I kept thinking, this is the closest that it will ever get in Charlotte to this feeling of being in a place that's really alive and that is genuine and that it is completely organic. This energy comes from something that is real and is a true, lively spirit.
Being artists and having very high standards for our own work, we try to find work that is of the same caliber, if not better.
And as a side effect of us having the gallery, and as a side effect of the other galleries opening their doors, what happened in the early days was really, it became unnecessary for us to deal with the local scene because Friends of Van Gogh were doing it across the street, and then Studio 23, and Right Now Gallery, and then the Blue Pony next door. There were some natural new venues that kind of took care of that and were kind of exploratory or areas for people to kind of cut their teeth, in terms of exhibiting their work and being part of something. So then, for us, it was a natural progression to kind of broaden our horizons.
We began the gallery not as a business, as an art business, even though I had worked in galleries and museums for many years, but pretty much as an extension of our lifestyle as artists and wanting to show the very best regional art that we could find.
Here in the late 90s, the North Davidson art scene is starting to become the establishment. It started off as an alternative space for what was then a fairly large downtown or uptown gallery scene, which has now kind of moved away from the city center. In those intervening years, the North Davidson scene has grown and grown and grown, and is now sort of an ongoing institution in itself.
The Friends of Van Gogh, my first real experience with showing in a gallery, even though it was a used car lot up on Sugar Creek and Eastway, run by a New Englander named Terry Carano, started a group, very loose group called Friends of Van Gogh, of various artists who had nowhere else to show at that time in Charlotte.
The Friends of Van Gogh were a unique group in the sense that we kind of banded together without any sort of agenda other than the fact that we all loved art. Some of us were new to Charlotte, some of us had been here for a while, some of us had been here all our lives, and we formed under the auspices of a man named Terry Carano. And the reason we were called the Friends of Van Gogh is because Terry had gotten nicknamed Van Gogh in the Charlotte Observer, and so it was only natural that we be the Friends of Van Gogh. And what we started out doing was exhibiting in the back room of a used car lot, because that was really the only space available that we could find, and Terry happened to work as a used car salesman at that lot. Terry was good at selling himself, being a car salesman, and he was able to get the Observer and other papers come out to the used car lot location, where he not only exhibited his paintings and ours, but he also painted there. He had a studio there, and anybody could walk in and see him painting at any time. And I think it had a lot to do with the way he looked. You know, he had the beard and the glasses and the red hair. And I think since Van Gogh was more common to most non-artists, that name anyway, he was just dubbed Van Gogh, the Van Gogh of Charlotte.
I was approached by Terry Carano. He was an artist in this area at the time, and money-wise, he had none, so I let him use the property at a very nominal fee, and he started the artists coming in, showing their artwork, and it became quite exciting, I think, to the neighborhood and the Charlotte area, for people to come down to see the artist's work and just to see the historic neighborhood that was being brought forward to them.
When Absinthe and Acanthus opened, the rooms themselves were basically, I think they were old storage facilities, and they basically were exposed brick, exposed ceilings, you know, the wires, the pipes, all that, cement floors, and for a while they stayed that way, and we basically hung our paintings right over the exposed brick. It had which gave it kind of a unique look and flavor, and Terry had a habit of cramming as many paintings as he possibly could on the walls to cover up some of those discrepancies in the walls. But after a while, we were able to secure enough money to put up drywall and to paint the floors and to get the galleries looking a little bit more professional.
In 1990, the Friends of Van Gogh came out here to Davidson Street and opened up 2 galleries across from Center of the Earth. And they needed a little bit of renovation, that type of thing. We needed to finish out the walls, finish the floors, get the galleries ready to go and get them where they would be presentable to the public. So what we did was all the artists that were in the Friends of Van Gogh got together and they painted artworks, did permanent pieces of work on the old existing walls in the building. And after the works were finished, then we sealed the works up. We put up the sheetrock, we put up the plasterboard, and we finished the walls out. So now there are these permanent pieces of work in there on the walls, in behind the walls. Sort of a snapshot, in time, where if these walls are ever taken down at any time in the future, there will be all these existing pieces of work that sort of tell people about the history of the street, the history of this group, and where they came from.
The reason they actually chose Absinthe and Acanthus was because both those words began with the letter A, and they figured as far as the Yellow Pages and other advertising went, that it was always good to have something begin with an A. You would be first in the advertising. But there is other story to it. Absinthe is actually I believe it's an old liquor or some kind of drink from the days of Van Gogh. Artists would get high on absinthe and paint in that state. So it's kind of notorious for that also. And Acanthus is actually the plant, the leaf that you see going around the dollar bill, or all bills. I guess they chose that for good luck. Maybe it would bring them good fortune, money, so forth.
A lot of great things happen down here on this street, and to see the street develop over the years brings back a lot of memories. I remember one thing in particular. At one time, the core group of artists got down to about 8 or 10 artists, and Terry Carano decided that he would make it more of an intimate working space by actually dividing the floor and the wall spaces up into equal parts, numbering each one, throwing the numbers in a hat, and then by a system of lottery, each artist would draw a number, and that would be his spot for the month. Needless to say, a lot of people wanted the window spots or a back wall spot, but it was just up to chance what you got. And he called it the stable. And you could do anything you wanted in that spot. You could bring your easels down, you could not only use the wall space and the floor space, but you could use wall space coming out from the imaginary line that was drawn on the floor. It was really quite an experiment. It didn't work too good, come to think of it.
It goes back to all the traditions of artists when they kind of band together. I think that artists are notorious for working alone and in their studios and not sort of getting together. And that coalition that's created by something like North Davidson is essential for the growth of any visual arts community in a city.
'23 Studio came into existence because of a need for an outlet for emerging artists. At the time there was no venue for emerging artists in Charlotte. The number of galleries was small and they were pretty limited in what they were doing, and nobody seemed to be taking any chances. And so there was a need, and this turned out to be the right neighborhood. North Davidson Street was the rundown, everything was boarded up neighborhood when we came out here. And my first appearance out here was I had a show across the street at what was then Rococo Fish in December of 1990. And at that time, the two galleries, '23 Studio and the Right Now Gallery at the time, were both boarded up. There was nothing in there. They were vacant. And then by April or May of '91, there were two galleries in where '23 Studio and Right Now Gallery are now. They were Absinthe and Acanthus Gallery, run by a fellow by the name of Terry Carano. Then after a year or so, he was kind of belly up. And in August of 1992, he asked me to come down to the gallery. I was just one of the artists down here hanging around. And so I came down and I held out my hand, and he dropped the keys in my hand and said, "Here you go, it's all yours." He walked out, and that was pretty much the last anybody saw of him. The landlords came up, Pat. She asked me if I wanted to rent the galleries. I said I could rent one of them. So we picked up '23 Studio, and with myself and 5 other artists, I got a 6-month commitment from 5 other artists. And we decided to try it for 6 months, and if it flew, it flew, and if it went belly up, well, that was the end of it. But we're still here.
I've been here in Charlotte about 12 years now, but I have been in the country for about 17 years. I'm originally from Iraq, and I just became a citizen a couple of years ago. '23 Studio was the first gallery that actually accept any artist, which was a great opportunity for me to show my work. And that's how I actually started.
Well, the whole idea of a '23 Studio and what it is it's a place for, it seems to me that the way the gallery system works is, you know, there's a show by this artist or these couple of artists this month, and then the next month there's this, and then there's all these separate and individual shows, and these artists are acting kind of in a vacuum. They never really get together. The idea of '23 Studio is to have a bunch of artists in there all the time, so that these artists actually communicate with each other, so that we can try and get something going between us, so that we can steal ideas from each other. And that was the idea, one of the ideas behind the origin of 23 Studios, so that collectively we could create and make something happen that we couldn't make happen with each of us operating in the typical artist vacuum environment. So we're trying to change the environment, and it works, because you look at every month you'll see somebody will bring in a new piece. First of all, it makes people productive, because everybody's got ideas and they bubble over and they want to come out. So, and then you see somebody steal an idea from somebody, and somebody steal an idea from somebody else, and this whole thing kind of is driving itself, and it all comes together and it drives itself along. So there's this constant creative thing. It doesn't fizzle out, it just keeps going all the time, and it's just kept going all the time. That's why we're still here. That's why, that's how it worked.
At one point when the, I guess, stereotypically crack freaks were running around, they saw open prey with these people coming down here, and there was a robbery or two. So 23 Studio, actually Steve and whoever came up with the idea for a security patrol, and we walked around the perimeter of the place, a few blocks back and around, with black security hats and flashlights, just to show them that we were there, and that they that their prey was not that easy anymore. And we've since stopped that, because we don't need it anymore. I think we've pushed that faction far enough out from the perimeter that, and that's progress.
The Right Now Gallery came into existence when the then Vasas Los Gallery closed in August of 1994. And again, that's another property that Pat and Dick own, and they came to me and asked me if I was interested in it. And we had finally gotten 23 Studio to the point where it wasn't out of pocket anymore, and that was kind of refreshing. And then the thought of taking on a whole new load was kind of frightening. So I told them no, I didn't want it, but yeah, I'd take it. So we opened in September of the Right Now Gallery in September of 1994. It got its name, by the way, from Jerry Kirk, who put a lot of pressure on me to name the gallery. He was going to open, and he was going to be the first show in there, and I didn't have a name for the gallery, and he called me up one Sunday and said he needed a name. And I told him I'd call him back. I hung up the phone, and I hollered out the door to my wife, "Donna, I need a name right now." And then I called Jerry back.
I think some of the most gratifying times that I've had in relationship to the North Davidson art community was late in the evenings on gallery crawls. I'd kind of wander across. I would stand around in the gallery and talk to gallery visitors and so forth, particularly if I had a show there. I've had 2 or 3 shows at the gallery, but I'd eventually wander across the street and sit in a circle of folks over at 23 Studio, and I was always struck by the spirit and the camaraderie over there of a group of very different people, but that had in common a real intense love of making art. And making art of all kinds. That gallery is just amazing, because you go in there and you're never quite prepared for what you might see on the walls, and it changes all the times, and it runs from A to Z, and it's just delightful to walk in there and discover something new.
it's very exciting work to view. I think there's a really solid concentration on regional and area artists, which this city needs dramatically. I think it's an expression of young ideas, which very oftentimes don't get a chance to be viewed and seen and discovered in more established galleries. And I think the work is more risky. And that's really, for me, what art is about. If you're looking to create imagery and create forms that stay within a relatively safe boundary, then I really think you're limiting not only your own creative process, but you're limiting the opportunity for your viewing public to expand their own consciousness and their own intellectual connection to the work.
Rococo Fish basically started with Clark Whittington, Jamie McClendon, and myself. We all went to Appalachian State, graduated with graphic design degrees. We're doing painting and sculpture on the side, and Clark was talking about having an art yard sale. So I said, well, we have the space here at my father's studio. You know, we had some extra room at 1417 Central Avenue, which is where we started. Had our first show March of '90. Paul and Ruth used to live directly or down on Clemens, which is right behind where we started the gallery on Central. And they were at our first opening. They had strolled through. I'm not sure if they were going to the Dairy Queen or if they were specifically coming to see what was happening with the people gathering around there. And that's when we first met Paul and Ruth, and they were talking about opening a new space, or we're renting space down on North Davidson. So I rode over and looked at the space, and Clark came over and looked at it, and I basically wrote a contract to start and have our first show in July.
I became involved with Rococo Fish because Clark Whittington, Jamie McClendon, and Kevin Massey and myself went to Appalachian State University together. Those guys started Rococo Fish because there was not many choices for young artists to exhibit their work, and they were very eager and extremely productive. And they asked me to join in and assist with maintaining the gallery. Ursa Major became an idea as Rococo Fish didn't feel very stable to the people who established it. And since I had been volunteering for a year with the gallery, I volunteered to take over the lease and to be the director of the gallery. And everybody had their responsibilities, and about 5 of us, including Clark, Julie, Jamie, and Kevin, decided to continue Rococo Fish and its mission as Ursa Major. I feel like Ursa Major was an important part of the history of North Davidson Street. We provided not only exhibit space for artists who weren't established, but we also provided places for people to do poetry readings, for college students to do salons where they talked about their own artwork and critiqued others. We provided venues for variety programs like Psychokinetic Event along with the rest of the street.
I guess somewhere around 1993, I was told about Kim Stimson, who owned the gallery, which was then Ursa Major. And I was told that Kim was very receptive to the work of emerging artists and artists from Charlotte. So I contacted Kim and indeed had 1 or 2 shows here. And then found out that Kim was no longer going to maintain the gallery, and realized that I was out of a gallery space, but a lot of artists like me were also out of gallery space. So in 1994, I took the big leap of opening my own gallery, which I called the Blue Pony, and I have tried to sort of continue that heritage of having a gallery that was kind to young and emerging artists, to local artists, but also trying to kind of walk a fine line
and also have established artists, national artists, regional artists, and kind of walking a narrow line between more mainstream art, although very contemporary, and also outsider art and experimental art. I think that's something that Charlotte needs. Charlotte tends to be a very conservative area, and I think that one of the roles of a gallery is to show people what's happening in the art world and to challenge them.
In terms of how we compete with other cities across the country, the major entertainment aspects that they try to promote are inextricably tied into their past. You have in Dallas the West End Marketplace. You have Boston that has Faneuil Hall that has been remodeled. So again, it's really important for us in terms of reclaiming a sense of heritage to take a good look at our historical assets and be able to reuse them for visitor promotion purposes.
The term NoDa is believed to have been coined by the owners of a contemporary furnishings gallery called New Mythos, which was on the corner of 35th and North Davidson Street. NoDa, as written, has several interpretations, including North Davidson Street Arts District and North Davidson Street Artists. No matter what the exact meaning, NoDa has come to be the definitive word for the gallery district that by the summer of 1992 had witnessed an unbelievable surge in popularity. The gallery crawls were drawing crowds numbering in the hundreds, sometimes thousands. Struggling artists finally began to see their art selling, and the vendors and bars were showing strong profits. More businesses opened on the street, most notably St. Ruby's Java Joint, a coffee shop owned by local resident Betsy Bilger. St. Ruby's became a favorite hangout and a choice place to hear live music. A couple of years later, St. Ruby's would close, and a restaurant nightclub called Fat City would replace it as the street's magnet for socializing. New galleries entered the scene. Some, like the Right Now Gallery, hung on and survived. Others, like Sistas and Vas East Los, faded despite strong efforts to succeed. Performing arts groups found an appreciative audience. Most noticeable among these were the Raven Maniacs. Even live poetry readings became popular. NoDa was becoming a mecca for alternative cultural experiences in a city where few were offered. Through all of this, the North Charlotte neighborhoods were indirectly sharing in the attention that NoDa was generating and experiencing changes few ever thought they would see.
I love living in historic North Charlotte. It's a neighborhood unlike any other neighborhood I've ever lived in. It's full of all kind of characters. There are, people here from every walk of life. There's artists, there's musicians, there's dancers, there's stockbrokers, there's bankers, there's construction workers and social workers. I mean, it's all type of people. It's a neighborhood full of people who live in their front yards. They're people that you see. If you walk down the street any evening or any afternoon, people are on their porch, people are in their yard. People talk to people, ask questions. It's not like it's a nosy neighborhood. It's kind of like people care. They want to know your name. They want to know where you live. They want to know what you've done to your house. Whenever I walk around, people always say, "Oh, you live in Mr. Dyer's house." And they tell me how Mr. Dyer and his 3 boys lived here since the 20s. And they ask about what I've done to the house. And they really seem to like having you in the neighborhood.
Well, I feel that this area has got the most potential to turn into a very lively neighborhood that allows people to kind of enjoy a different lifestyle, which you rather find in cities like Amsterdam or probably also San Francisco and New York, where people walk and communicate with each other in the streets, where neighbors know each other maybe also. and I think people just do things together. I believe that a lot of very interesting people from varying fields, and particularly the arts world, have moved here now and that want to make a difference, and that are challenged by this old part of Charlotte.
In terms of what impact the gallery district, the arts district has had on the neighborhood, I think it's been very, very positive, because it's brought people to this area, it's brought attention to this area, and I think that it has made it safe, it's made it, it's gotten economic attention, and I think that it's had a very, very positive effect on the neighborhood, and it also gives the neighborhood people a place to come and look at different things and to look at art.
It's been a very nice, almost a blossoming over the past 10 years to kind of watch both the business district transform and the neighborhood transform, and kind of come back alive in a way. The boards have both come off the fronts of the buildings, as well as, you know, some of the houses in the neighborhood that had been abandoned, you know, years ago. That's now gone, and the vacancy, there is no vacancy. It's just a very pleasant process to actually be able to watch and be part of.
There's a lot of work being done out here, and as you can see out here now, it's cleared up. Been a lot of renovations on the buildings. It's even got some of the other parts of the neighborhood straightening their area up. I believe the neighborhood will keep the same look for years to come.
One of the funniest things that's happened to me since I've lived here is one afternoon we were sitting out on the porch just kind of hanging out, and my neighbor over here to the left said, Chuck, come here. Called me over, and he and his wife and their dog were out in the yard, and he said, watch this, watch this. And he gets a big extension ladder, and the dog goes wild, jumping around, barking, acting real happy. He leans the ladder up against the house with the top of the ladder on the roof, and this dog just climbs right up this ladder onto the roof. Starts walking around, barking, being really happy, stays up there an hour or so, can't come down. Stuart has to climb the ladder and carry the dog down. It's never a dull moment in North Charlotte.
It's always been cutting edge out here, but that's what I've been attracted to, and there's been a definite positive evolution of good change because of Gallery Crawl and the people it's attracted throughout the city.
The Charlotte Gallery Crawls primarily are events that take place on the first and the third Fridays of every month. And what they are is basically all of the galleries are open, usually exhibiting new work. And it's not only the galleries themselves that participate, but the whole street neighborhood gets involved. There's bands that play in a lot of the venues. There's street vendors, street musicians. There's other shops besides the galleries that are open, such as restaurants and clothing stores, record stores. And the gallery crawls really are more of a block party in which a celebration of Charlotte's cultural diversity takes place, and everyone is welcome. And usually you see all types of different people down here. It's a lot of fun.
We've expanded the gallery crawls out to a second crawl, and we've had music every time, different bands all the time, and it's really a great experience.
The character of the crawl is the people that are out here. Over the years, we've had such a variety of people There's the guy that sits out here and plays the fiddle all the time. I mean, he really adds to the atmosphere of it all. The belly dancers. You know, there's artists on the ground. There's the tarot card readers. The regulars that we've seen over the last 6 years. I look around, I see a lot of familiar faces. They all smile back, and I think they're happy to see the crawl grow like it has.
The thing that I notice about it is, if you want to see the artwork, then and really appreciate the artwork, then you come early, because later, I think kind of the energy down here shifts a little bit, and it's more about people and with the artwork kind of holding that together, you know, kind of weaving that whole community thing together.
There are people all up and down the streets. It's like leaving the city for a day and going shopping in the big city, because you've got hot dog vendors on the corner, and you've got people walking from shop to shop and having a good time, and it's really cool.
Oh, you get to see a lot of different people out here. You'll see some with purple hair and green hair, orange and red. I'm not talking about regular red, but wild reds. So you get to see a different mixture. It's not all the preppy look, what I call the preppy look.
The gallery crawl and this going on the street has actually improved the neighborhoods around the street. And there's a lot more buildings that were closed up that are opening up, and I see it as well, from my point of view, I see it as a good cultural thing happening to North Charlotte. You know, some people see it as an economic boost, and some people see it as, you know, making money or whatever. I see it as giving art some more ground. Yeah.
When you're on North Davidson Street, I mean, I tell people you can go to the gallery crawl and never spend a penny, but you will have one of the richest experiences. Now, I have since bought a house in that neighborhood, and it's that same reason why I bought a house. I'm just one block over. And I felt like I was drawn to that energy, and it's not just gallery crawl night. I mean, I want to tell people, go there on a Monday afternoon, go there on a Wednesday at lunchtime. Because there's so much to do. There's Fat City, there's window shopping, there's Blue Pony will be open, Center of the Earth will be open, Bead Shop will be open. All kinds of stuff is happening.
We have anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 people in attendance. They come to see the artwork naturally, and of course to have beer, food vendors are out front, we have bands out back, and it drastically increases the business for the night. In fact, if it weren't for gallery crawls, this area probably would not exist.
One of the things that I really love about the gallery crawl is the drumming that takes place there. It's a really wonderful way to involve everybody that's walking around and to cause a sort of tempo for the creation of that space and the artists that are living there.
We are beginning to see a whole new galvanizing impact of the arts in this community. The recent experiences of the past year have shown us that the art scene is a very vital part of what's happening in Charlotte, and we are so pleased to be here at this time. This is a time for people who love the arts, who are involved in the arts, who are artists, but also not necessarily just artists, but people who just are interested in the arts to be here. Other communities, lots larger than we are not able to boast the wonderful community that we have and the specialness of place.
I see a lot of growth for this area. I mean, it's happening right now. I know that there are plans for more shops, I think some cafes and other galleries to open. And I think the city, from what I hear, is about to pour some money into the area by way of revitalizing the street, putting new street lights up, redoing the roads, things like that. They're already giving support down here by having the police come and sort of patrol the area, especially during gallery crawl nights. And I think as the city continues to grow, the North Davidson street scene is going to continue to grow as well.
I'm very optimistic about Charlotte's future artistic growth, and one of the reasons I'm most optimistic about it is the kind of thing that's happening right here on North Davidson Street.
I hope the future of North Davidson Street is that I'll be able to look back 30 years from now and the entire street will be covered in galleries. There'll be a thriving arts community that really sets Charlotte apart as a unique place to come see artists and their work and the environment, that they exist in, sort of a mini Soho, if you will.
We ever get 36th Street going, that looks like it's the future up there, and parts of North Davidson still. It's really going to blow open, I think, by the turn of the century.
For the future of this area, the North Davidson Arts District, on a purely literal sense, I see the development of the Highland Mill into shops and studios, maybe more gallery spaces, and I see the development all up and down North Davidson Street, up towards Uptown and down in the other direction, more shops, restaurants, studios, galleries, and just really becoming a very vibrant art scene.
What's promising about further development in the North Davidson Street area is the flexibility of the what the architects call the urban fabric around that immediate two-block area. It is ripe for development, and that's one reason for the success of that area. Property initially was less expensive than in other areas of the city. As long as artists and entrepreneurs were willing to put in heavy-duty sweat equity, they could upgrade those properties and make them both residences in some cases and working studios and exhibition galleries.
I think things are just going to continue to just keep jamming here. And well, this is going to be an art community just like all the other art communities. It starts out as a very pure thing where money really doesn't have anything to do with it, where the spirit of art is, the spirit of creativity, and that still exists here at 23 Studio. But as time goes on and the values in the neighborhood go up, as they already have started to do, we'll go through the cycle just like every other neighborhood. 20 years from now, this will just be a tourist trap. All the artists will be gone.
There are a couple of problems that need to be worked out, one of which is the fact that this road is a major thoroughfare for trucks, which can get kind of dangerous. A lot of them pretty much barrel through here at any time of the day. That's something that I think that is trying to be worked out among the city and the arts organizations down here, maybe to get this trucking route changed. But overall, I think it's a positive thing that's happening down here, and it will continue to be positive. The NoDa scene has become very important to Charlotte, and I think Charlotte is starting to realize that, and with the support of the city, the continued support of the artists, and the other people down here, I think there's nowhere to go but up.
I think the future is very bright. So many things are happening. I remember when we first came down here on a gallery crawl night, we felt we were lucky if there were 20 or 30 people to walk down the street and come in the door. And you come down now on a gallery crawl night and the streets are packed with people out in the streets, jamming the sidewalks, people buying art, listening to music.
My feeling is that as long as we can have people who are moving into Charlotte, into the community, who bring with them memories of European cities and New York and Chicago and San Francisco and Durham, North Carolina, wherever it is that has that urban, gritty kind of quality that they have grown to appreciate, then I think that this area will be very it has a great future.
You know, for residents here, there's a lot of things happening. We hold a lot of hope for things to change in this neighborhood. We've seen a lot of changes. Crime has really lowered. Some of the crack houses and the prostitution has moved out of the neighborhood, and we have a lot of hope for things changing. That Paul McBroom has taken over the block on 36th Street with the theater, and it looks like we're going to get some kind of performing arts center. In fact, somebody has been calling it the McGroomenthal Performing Arts Center. It looks like that there are going to be some new restaurants and stores opening, which are really great for those of us who live here because it's all things that we can walk to. And for people who live in other parts of Charlotte, this is rapidly becoming a destination, a place they want to get in their car and drive to.
I'm busy right now moving my company up here, which is a dance theater company, Moving Poets, which we created with, together with some other fine artists, I think, back in April of this year. And we're going to make this our home base, basically, to try to develop together with many other people as well, the old North Charlotte Theater on 36th Street. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what's going to happen. I believe it's going to be very, very interesting.
There could be, in the reshaping of some new aspect of the Davidson Street area, an opportunity for an open studio where not only artists exhibit, but artists can come down and use printing presses and come down and use foundries and come down and use high-tech equipment that is out of reach as far as being able to finance for young artists, and have a conglomerate of a very active studio environment, a working environment, and exhibiting environment.
When you look back at the various civilizations over time, the art is essentially what denotes, what kind of culture you had, what kind of base you had as far as with people and with their technology and with their styles and everything like that. That's what the art portrayed. It let you know what that society was about and what that civilization, how they existed. And that's what I would love to think that this place would be able to become. It's something that people can look back on and see as a truly unique expression of the Charlotte area and know that these artists who are here have been here from the beginning and been able to build it up to what it is, in the future.
Approaching 1998, the promise of a complete rejuvenation of North Charlotte has yet to be fulfilled. However, as a direct result of the changes brought about by NoDa, slow but steady progress is being made. The city has plans to allocate funds for the improvement of sidewalks and streets in the North Davidson Street area, and businesses continue to move in. 36th Street is showing signs of coming alive with the restoration of an old movie theater as a venue for live music and performances, and a new clothing and art shop has opened. On 35th Street, the Rising Moon Bookstore has joined the neighborhood, and there are rumors of a pizza cafe and other restaurants coming soon. Fat City, Center of the Earth, the Blue Pony, 23 Studio, and Right Now Gallery continue to do well, and Pat's Time for One More will soon operate under new management. The growth on North Davidson Street continues, with the realization by most that no matter at what pace this evolution proceeds, it probably wouldn't be taking place at all without the vision, optimism, and sheer tenacity of a small number of artists who believed in themselves and their dreams. To order a copy of this video program, contact Burke Design Group at 800-690-9693 or visit our website at www.burkedesign.com.